Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Make the Jump here from the BrickCityBlockade.com podcast network. That's right, it is the second series episode in our Jedi Code series here from the network and from Rebel Chatter, Rebel Cause Lancaster. Caden, let's break this thing down, man.
How's it going, fans? We, like Robin said, are on episode 2 here, which is our There Is No Ignorance, There Is Knowledge episode. We're going to be breaking down each line of the Jedi Code and just kind of seeing how it can apply to real life. Obviously, we all wish we could be Jedi Knights, so why not put some of their teachings into play? So again, the next line is, there is no ignorance, there is knowledge. Now, when I first hear that, my mind automatically kind of goes to, to situations that we face every day. The first note that I have about this is, entering any situation with no knowledge of the situation is always harmful. Whether it's, going to work and, like lying on your resume type of thing. You go into a situation that you really don't have any knowledge about, you're not going to be able to do any good. It's not going to help any situation. And, kind of like Ahsoka said, to defeat your enemy, you must understand them. And that, I think that really kind of goes to the middle of what this line is. When there's any barrier or obstacle you have to get over in your life, first you need to get to the root of the problem and really understand what it is before you can make a positive change. Robin, what's the first things that come to your head thinking about this?
Well, this is such an important piece of the Jedi Code, and it reflects itself directly on the life in which we live every single day. And you mentioned it, Caden, it's the people that we work with, it's our bosses, it's the coworkers. I might have mentioned this even on the last one, but it's within those relationships where we feel that there's conflict at times. We do have to understand who that person is on the other side. We have to understand that, we may see them as our enemy. However, we need to understand that there is knowledge between us. There is an understanding that still resides as human beings. We're of the same species. We're of the same genetic understanding, I guess you could say. It's semi-scientific at the same time. But it's this universal concept of there is something that binds us all together, with Star Wars, it being the Force, but in life itself, that understanding that our brains are interconnected, not necessarily physically, but through this spiritual realm, and through this understanding that we can interact with each other and understand each other, even though we may be on different wavelengths at that time.
Oh, absolutely, man. And, to look into Star Wars, for some direction, I guess, with all this, at the end of his life, Darth Maul looked at Obi-Wan and said, will he avenge us? They were sworn enemies, like through, when you think of Obi-Wan's, like arch nemesis, kind of goes to Darth Maul.
Right.
And at the end of his life, they were almost equals. And really, if they would have taken some of the ignorance aside, they would have gained the knowledge that they really weren't that different.
True.
They could have possibly been on the same team. And, it's very true to life that if let's say it's an enemy, like Ahsoka says, to defeat your enemy, you must understand them. If you have an issue with somebody, and to sit down with that person and really just to try and connect on any level, you can really do some pretty amazing things in life, which was really to take someone who you may have had your differences and realize there's much more connective tissue than there is scar tissue, let's say. There's much more positivity than there is negativity between you and a person, or you and a situation.
Right.
And I think this is such an important, one of the most important, I'd say probably like the second most important one in the Jedi Code, because It's just something that can very easily be applied to everyday life. Gain the knowledge before you try and do something. Really try and understand this hurdle or enemy, as Ahsoka said, before you try and confront it, because it might be a lot easier than you think to overcome.
And a lot of it too, also, is Caden, for the listeners, we think of it as another human being, but at the same time, there are hurdles that we create ourselves. There are hurdles
Absolutely.
that we put in front of ourselves that are just, they look so intimidating and so tough to jump over. And we have to say to ourselves, well, you know what? I set myself up for that. I now need to understand how to get over that hurdle. Sometimes the enemy is ourself. And sometimes in those moments, we have to say, you know what? The knowledge is already embedded within us. It's how we use that knowledge to fight against ourself and to get over that hurdle. That's one of the most challenging things in life. And I think even though we may look at somebody as an enemy and we may need to know where they're coming from, sometimes we set ourselves up to look at them as an enemy because we just don't understand them, or we have this preconceptualized idea of who they possibly could be. And that's a very scary thought. And that's something that I think we strive to try to remove from life. And we try to understand that those people are here for a reason in this moment. It's not for us to attack them or to not even necessarily get to know who they are, even though that goes against what I said before. But at the same time, it's almost like we have to get inside our own mind and fight against what we have bred ourselves to be, and look at that person and say, you know what, I got to give it a chance. I got to get to know them through my own mind and not through what they may be projecting onto me.
Oh, absolutely, man. And you know what? I think as human beings, we all fear what we don't understand.
True.
And, that really applies to this as well. Um, with everything that I've ever done with Rebel Cause, and I'm sure you're the same way with the network, Brick City, I always face things from the point of view of, if this doesn't make me uncomfortable,
Hmm.
I don't think I'm doing the right thing,
Right.
because I'm stepping out of my box. You know what I mean? And, maybe something that I do now or would have done now, whether it be events or even podcasting,
Hmm.
I'm sure the first time you picked up a microphone, you were like, what am I doing?
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I go back and listen to the beta episode of Rebel Chatter, and I'm just like, wow, what are we talking about? It's very different show now than it was at first. And that is all from knowledge that we've gained through ignorance.
True.
You start out not knowing anything about a situation or a mental hurdle, as you said. That was a great point. Pointing out the hurdles we put inside ourselves. It's not necessarily a physical enemy or hurdle. Um, the easiest thing you can do, and well, the hardest thing and the easiest thing, is to first overcome those hurdles within yourself.
Yeah.
To learn what it is that is preventing you from taking that next step, from becoming better, to improve yourself. And by improving yourself, you improve everything around you, because you are a reflection of yourself,
Hmm.
your inner self, your spirit, your soul. And that's just so important for people to really embrace. If you're going to take anything from this Jedi code, this is one of the most important lines, like I said. Really just learn. Take everything in. Even people that you don't think you can learn from, or situations you don't think you can learn from, that's wrong. And that's the wrong way to go about thinking. We all learn something new every day. I was talking with my one of my best friend's 5-year old daughters in the car the other day, and she was like, you teach me new things, and every day you teach me new things." And she was telling me some stuff from school, and she told me some stuff that I didn't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
They were learning about ducks that day, and I forget exactly what it was she said, but I was like, no, you teach me stuff every day too. You don't think you would learn something from a 5-year old,
Hmm.
but truly wonderful the mind of a child is, as Yoda said, and that is very, very true.
It is. It reflects itself throughout every aspect of life. And I have to say, I see it every day as a teacher too, Caden. You know, we have those moments where we look back and we see a kid talking about something so simple, simple as a duck or simple as a fact that they may have learned at one moment. And it's like maybe we were not introduced to that right away. And it just catches you off guard for a second. You're like, wow, that's a big moment for them. And for me to realize that that's a piece of knowledge. That's something that, as simple as it may be, is something today that I was not thinking about and is thrown at me. And I'm like, wow, that is so, so crucial to this moment. And I'm going to say it. It's crucial to that part of life. I'm sure for you, Caden, in that moment, you look at a child like that and you see it's somebody who you're familiar with, and it's somebody who's experiencing, um, growing up similar to what we did as kids. We were learning new things along the way. We were being introduced to these brand new concepts that we had never thought about before, facts. And it's just absolutely fascinating to see that play out now when you're older. And as we continue to get older, which is a scary thought, just seeing more and more of that development happening and just reflecting upon what's happened over time and making sure not to make those moments our enemies where we overthink them and we allow ourselves to say, you know what, that's stuff I've already learned. I'm not going to continue to give it any thought. No, it's every piece of knowledge has a purpose, and every piece of knowledge propels us in a way forward that is so crucial to our development and our continual progression as human beings.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I like you were saying with growing up, sometimes mentally, I don't feel like I'm any older than I was when I was, 15. You know what I
Mm,
mean? But the only difference between me now, me then, is the wisdom that
yeah,
I've taken from people. And I mean, I people argue that's what growing up is, but it's really interesting just in your everyday life, whether it's a family member or just other interesting people, just really take in the things they say. I remember my grandfather when I was younger, he would always talk about quote unquote the journey.
hmm.
And as a kid, I'm like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, right.
He's like super, part Native American, super into, the outdoorsy woods stuff, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Thought he might have had a little too much Jawa juice that night or something like that and was just rambling on. But really, it's such a great piece of advice that he gave me. He's like, you're on this journey, buddy. You got to make the most of it. What are you doing with your journey?
Yeah,
And like I said at the time, I'm like, what is he talking about? That's such great advice. You really
yeah,
look at your life and you know that you are nothing besides what you learn and what you take on. And, there is no ignorance, there is knowledge.
beautifully said. Cannot say it any better. Those are the moments that continually perpetuate forward and just allow us to think every single time you, the listeners, gives you a chance to reflect upon everything that's happened to you up to this point in life and to remember that knowledge is your friend and it really helps develop who you are as a person. Beautifully said, Caden. All right, Caden, it's that time of the episode. It's a little thing we like to call.
Plug time.
That's right. Where can the good people find you? And no ignorance on social media.
You can find us on Rebel Cause Lancaster on Facebook and on Instagram. You can find our podcast, Rebel Chatter, which is the official podcast of Rebel Cause, on rebelchatter.com and on Rebel Chatter HQ on Instagram and on iTunes and all the other great podcasting listening apps.
You guys can follow me over on Twitter at Mr. Vote Tweets. Please make sure to check out the continuous positivity message that you can always find on Instagram at The Official Vote. Head on over to www.brickcityblockade.com for everything happening in a galaxy far, far away. Follow us, you know the spiel, across all the great podcasting apps that you can find on the interweb. And of course, as we always say, may the force be with you.
Always.